Hey there, beautiful people. My name is Mark Siegel, and I'm going to be doing the flipped learning for intermediate/advanced users during this session. So a couple things I want to say is, for those of you who don't know me, I am the EdTech specialist at Middletown South, and I also teach a class called Innovation and Design, which is a hands-on, collaborative learning environment. I have been a flipped classroom presenter and teacher for the last 10 years, so I'm bringing together all the tips and tricks that I've used, plus all of the people that I am friends with, and the different things that they're doing. So hopefully I'll give you a lot of different things to think about as you're learning about flipped learning. If you'd like to access this presentation, just go to bit.ly/flippedlearningmtps. It is case sensitive, so be careful of that. Okay, let's jump into it. First of all, why am I using flipped learning and not flipped classroom? Because we focus on this question all the time. What is the most effective use of your face-to-face time with your students? So here's the problem. We no longer have a classroom. So we have some students who will be in class, and some students who will be virtual, and some students who will always be virtual and never be in class. So how can we possibly call this a flipped classroom anymore? Some of these kids are learning in their beds, in their basements, in their kitchen, on their outdoor patio. Some of us will be teaching in those environments as well. So how can we possibly call this classroom stuff anymore? So we're going to focus on this question all the time. You'll hear me say this several times throughout this presentation. Okay, in this presentation, I'm going to focus in on these 4 areas, and yeah, I'll talk about homework too, but that's a different story. We're going to talk about mastery learning, assessment, technology, and instructional alternatives. And like I said, towards almost the very last thing, I will talk about homework. And don't think that I'm anti-homework. I have a very specific stance on homework, but we'll get to that when we get to that slide. Okay, let's talk about mastery learning. So we all know about Bloom's taxonomy. This is Bloom's turned on its head. This was done by a person named Lauren Anderson, and Lauren kind of redesigned the Bloom's idea. Instead of having a pyramid where you build from the bottom up, this one's the reverse. So notice that typically in our instruction, this is the area that we focus in on, remembering and understanding. We focus on facts and figures, and then we focus on process, okay? But we spend very little time applying. And if you think about Bloom's at the top was always like this obviously a pyramid, but it's stacked, where creating was always the very topmost thing. But the problem is, in some of our classrooms, creating, evaluating, and analyzing have equal amounts of time. So how can we say that creating is more important than analyzing? So that's why I really like this pyramid right here. And something I failed to mention on the onset, all the pictures, or every picture that's in here, is hyperlinked to its source, and anything that's underlined is a link to another outside source as well. So there's tons and tons of links and information for you. But here's the thing that I want you to think about as you're designing your learning activities. Are your students completing assignments to learn the material, or are they completing it to get a grade? Now, as you are thinking about that as part of mastery learning, not instruction, but learning, I want you to think about that in terms of your instruction too, because are you giving students instruction that only lies here, and then all of a sudden they have to come all the way up here? Or are you giving some sort of scaffold assignment and scaffold instruction that brings them in a scaled format up to the top and has them analyzing, evaluating, and creating? Creating would be the best ideal situation, but sometimes simply analyzing what we remember and evaluating what we understand is just as important as creation. Okay, so I want to talk about mastery learning. Here are 3 ways that my students used in my chemistry classroom to explain what they learned. Okay, so again, are my students completing assignments to learn the material and demonstrate what they understand, or are they trying to get a grade? One thing that I did a lot of is, besides the instruction that I gave via video form, I would find information on the web, and I'd find videos on the web, and I'd have them watch this video. Now here's a 7.5-minute clip from the Ellen DeGeneres show. This man is named Steve Spangler. He is a Colorado science teacher and owns his own science materials company. And he goes on different shows and does demonstrations. There's people that show up on Jimmy Fallon. They do all sorts of stuff. But this one on Ellen is particularly great. And he shows her a variety of different science experiments. Now, as that's happening, I'm having those students watch this. Then, when they get to the end, I ask them questions like, why do you think this happened? How can we construct this experiment in our own classroom if we don't have access to the same materials? What is the fundamental piece that links back to what we are learning in class? How does this link back to our material? So I have them go into those deep dive questions just by watching material like this. I'll keep that playing so that you can be entertained while that's happening as well. Then I give them Google Forms to complete related to these different videos. Here's a weekly assessment video. This is a pure self-assessment. On a scale of 1 to 5, how well did you understand this material? Rate the amount of work you completed this week. Describe one thing you learned this week. I hate the word nothing. Oh, can't stand that one. Describe one thing you'd like to improve upon. Okay. Now notice it doesn't say improve in the class. I don't want them evaluating my classroom. I want them to evaluate themselves. And then the last one is write one test question based on what you learned. And I specifically said this should be a critical thinking question, not a multiple choice question. So this is a way for me to assess their learning and not give a grade anywhere associated with this. They can be honest and truthful here, and I can get real feedback on how to change things for the next week. The other thing that I do for them is I give them self-check quizzes. This is, again, a Google form. I took a video from my YouTube channel on a specific topic. Then underneath it, I asked them 3 questions. The first question is almost identical in process to what they saw in the first example in this. The second one is almost identical to the second example, and the third one goes a little bit beyond. So they have to kind of think about it first. Now, the beauty of this is set this up as a quiz, have it auto grade. Again, it's called a quiz, but it's self-check. I don't care what they get, and I'm sorry, PowerSchool doesn't care what they get because it's never going to go in there. This is for me to see where they are in their learning and for them to get immediate meaningful feedback from me. So I use the quizzes feature, they answer, and boom, it sends them an email not only with what they got right, what they got wrong, and feedback on all the things that they got wrong too. I can also link this back to specific parts of my video so they can get meaningful feedback and directed feedback. So if they didn't get this third question, no problem. I'll send them to exactly the point in the video. Hey, go to 2 minutes and 29 seconds, and the link is right there for them, and it pops up and helps them with that. Okay, we're going to stop this one. Even though if you do watch it to the end, he does fire like 500 of these little pop cap things all over the place. Okay, so gives you something to look forward to. See, they're just flying all over the place. Okay, here we go. Let's move on. So that's the key to this mastery learning is it's not just did I accomplish the basics, is how did I go beyond the basics and really demonstrate what I've understood from these lessons. Okay, now let's talk about technology. Here's one thing that I want to say. All of our students have Chromebooks at home. However, that does not mean they have equal access to technology. Like I said to you, some kids are going to be doing this at their kitchen table. Now, with synchronous learning, they might be doing this at the kitchen table with their little sibling who's in 2nd grade right next to them. So they can't always be watching a live video from you. Like if you're standing in front of the class and you're teaching from a whiteboard, they may not be able to do that. They may not have the headphones that they need. They may have to lower you down to the lowest volume. So there may be tons of distractions. So just because they have a device doesn't mean they have equal access with those devices. So here's a bunch of links that I'm giving you. One is my friend of mine, Kate Baker. She is a former English teacher in South Jersey, taught at Southern Regional. She found a way to connect to authors on social media. There's a ton of authors right now who are doing live readings of their books, or they're making themselves available on Twitter during specific times. This is great opportunities for your students to reach out to them and talk to them on social media, places that they're already at. These 3 options here, Jamboard, a web whiteboard, and BitPaper, are live whiteboards. So you can go to each of these websites like Jamboard, which is part of our Google Apps for Education. So it's right in your Google Drive. And you can set up a live Jamboard with your students. So you can instruct them on a whiteboard, and it appears immediately on their screen. Okay? That also allows them, if you set up the whiteboards in a variety of places, so it allows you to set up a bunch of whiteboards in there, you can assign students specific whiteboards to complete, and they do all their work, and all of their classmates can see exactly what's going on. Same thing happens with the web whiteboard and bit paper. Jamboard is just built into our Google Drive, so it's a lot easier for us to access. Okay, I'm going to get to the Learn on TikTok in a second. Google cheat sheet. Tyler Tarver created this whole Google cheat sheet, and he even just made one for students. So if you click on this link right here, it will jump you to a Google Doc that has a ton of resources. I mean, there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of resources in here for how to use Classroom, how to use Sheets, how to use Google Forms, from create a Google Form to upload student notes. They have resources for making your life easier. There are full training listings on here. Here's a Jamboard full walkthrough on here. YouTube's for education. YouTube full walkthrough on how to use YouTube. Tons of resources for you. And like I said, he just made one for students as well to help them get up to a higher level. Okay, now Learn on TikTok. Now, like many people, I went to quarantine and I found TikTok, and oh my gosh, it is the greatest professional development for teachers ever. So what I started doing is I started collecting things that I found on TikTok, and this is really bare bones, and I'm going to make this fancier. There'll be a link sent out with more updates on this, so check me out on Twitter. But I have variety of things on here. Here's a whole series of just general helpful websites. Here's some Google Drive apps. The best part about this is these videos are anywhere from 15 to 60 seconds in length. That's it. So if you want to learn how to use Chrome Remote Desktop, so we're going to have students who have issues with their Chromebook, but they're at home and they're just sitting there going, oh, Mr. Siegel, I don't know what to do. I can't access the blah, 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 blah. No problem. Go to find this 1-minute video, Chrome Remote Desktop, send them the link. Their Chromebook now becomes accessible to you via the internet. You can change settings. You can open up websites for them. It's amazing. You can do, if you want to learn about Bitmoji classrooms, it's all in here for you. Slides, presentations. So these are, like I said, are anywhere from 15 to 60-second videos for you to be able to access and just make things just a tiny bit better when it comes to technology. Okay, let's talk about instructional alternatives. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this slide. So let's talk about the obvious ones. A lot of people are going to jump to making videos. But here's the thing. If we all jump to making videos, the kids will now have 1,000 videos to watch all the time. And they will become inundated with videos, and they will become bored of videos. So if you do want to start with videos and do videos for like the most basic instruction, Screencastify is part of our Google Apps for Education. It should appear right in your toolbar. It looks exactly like this. It's super simple to use. We have the full version, so it's got some basic editing, and I think you now can make videos that are up to 30 or 60 minutes in length. It's crazy. Snagit is by the TechSmith company. It is a downloadable program, so it's not for Chromebooks, but it is for desktops and PCs. It is wonderful screen capture and video capture software. Very basic editing features for both photos and videos. Awesome program. Love to use it. I'm using Camtasia Studio, which is also made by TechSmith right now to make this video, and it is by far my favorite program to have on my computer. This one is Screencast-O-Matic. I just threw it up there as an extra thing on there, but honestly, Screencast-O-Matic and Screencastify do the same thing, except Screencastify allows you to save and go over the 15 minutes. And then there's EdPuzzle. And if you've never used EdPuzzle, it is a phenomenal resource. Upload your videos, add questions to the video as you go. Again, all my videos are everything on here, icons, pictures are all linked, but you can track how long the students are watching, how many questions they are getting right. They can create their own EdPuzzles. You can use videos from YouTube or Khan Academy or whatever you want to do, and then you can insert them right into the questions right into those videos. So while they're watching it, a question pops up, and they have to answer that question in order to move on. So it's a great way to hold students accountable and to get your instructional objectives across. The other side of it is we also have a full subscription to EdPuzzle, so you should have unlimited number of EdPuzzles that you can create, and it's perfect for this virtual learning environment. Now, also for instruction, Spark, Adobe Spark, again, full access from the district. Great, has websites, infographics, pictures, all sorts of video creation, all sorts of things in here that you can teach from. And the other side of it too is, remember, these 4 tools are great for teachers to use. These 4 tools up here are great for students to use. Flipgrid, we're going to get into Flipgrid in assessment, but Flipgrid has a whiteboard feature now. It has a split screen feature now. So you can pull information up onto Flipgrid from your computer instead of it always being on camera. So you can have your camera on one, your webcam on one side, and then something else going on the right-hand side. Spark has a video feature that only allows you to spend 10 seconds per slide. So it forces you to move quickly through material. Great for making like 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute videos. Super simple to use, very user friendly. Now, Fortnite and Minecraft. Fortnite has a creative feature. There are people creating escape rooms and all sorts of things in Fortnite Creative, and there doesn't have to be any fighting. You can turn off weapons and the students just have to run around. There's a billboard feature in there. There are pop-up heads-up questions that can pop up. So when they land at a certain spot, a question can appear in front of them. You can even set it up like an escape room so that they have to answer the question, and if they do it wrong, their character dies and has to respawn and make it back to that spot and answer that question correctly to move on to the next piece. So it's got like breakout rooms in there designed for there. So there's a ton of features. Minecraft, I don't have a link for Minecraft because there's like Minecraft EDU, and I can't link that here. But that same thing in principles as Fortnite. Teachers are creating whole classrooms, whole schools in Minecraft. So tons of resources out there for you. But let's go back to the video. These are way outside the box. When I said what kinds of radical outside the box methods are appropriate, these are actually appropriate. They have a place in your classroom. We just got to find a way to build it in there. These are not for September. These are for after you've built relationships. And then after you have those relationships built, then start throwing in the crazy in there. Okay, now let's talk about these 3 videos. Now I normally don't like to focus on videos, but I really want to talk about how we take our videos to the next level. So these first 2 videos have a lot of great content, but they have terrible execution. So let's look at Accounting 101. And this is not a criticism on accounting. Okay, so this has got some cool music going on. Awesome. Okay, now we jump into the video. And I'm going to turn up the sound a little bit. So we're talking about Accounting 101, and we haven't seen anything written so far. And it's a black screen. And there's nothing written yet. We're 40 seconds in. So let's jump forward a little bit. We've got red ink on a black background. There's nothing fancy here. And this is the #1 criticism that a lot of people have of Khan Academy. This is not a Khan Academy video. This is a teacher's video. Khan Academy uses black backgrounds, basic text. There's not a lot going on here. And students are going to have to watch 19 minutes and 48 seconds of this to get all the learning objectives out of this. So that one is a little bit of a problem. We need to jazz up our videos. Here's a teacher. This video, again, has great content. I have her video sound turned down. Not sure if you can, hopefully you can hear her. So if you can't hear her sound, she's in a very echoey room. She's writing nice and clear, super clear writing. We can watch her all. This is what a lot of teachers I'm sure will do on the first days or first videos is set up their webcams, record themselves writing on their whiteboards or on giant pieces of paper. This is great. However, we're too far away from the microphone. And everything is very echoey and very difficult to understand her. So unless you're really leaning in, you're going to have problems. And your students who do not have headphones are going to have issues with this. Now let's go to this next one. Okay, right off the bat, it is very clear what this video is about. Okay, it is got 2 main learning objectives. So I know that these 2 things are all we're going to focus in on. It's also 5 minutes in length. Notice this other one was only 3 minutes in length. Super important that you keep your videos short. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit on this one. So she set hers up like a document camera. Okay, now a little bit difficult to see because she's using pen on a white piece of paper to see what she's writing. This would probably be a lot clearer if I make it bigger. But now look what she did. She added arrows in here. Now that's part of an editing feature that may not be available to you, but you can do the same thing by cutting out a piece of paper and writing on that piece of paper and putting it right in front and having an arrow on there. So just because you can't do it digitally doesn't mean you can't do it. So it's a great idea to use other people's videos as a do and don'ts system of figuring out what you want to do for your particular classroom. And obviously these videos are all embedded here, so feel free to watch through them and so that you can get tips and tricks from them. Okay, now let's also talk about instruction. So one of the things I did in my classroom, I used assignment charts like this in my classroom. And the key to this is it gave the students a path to follow through our learning. Now, anything that was blue and hyperlinked was going to a video. Anything that's listed as required showed them that this is something that they had to do and would be graded. So like I said, let's talk about instructional alternatives. We are working in asynchronous environments. Some kids are going to watch a video and be able to understand it immediately. They're going to know exactly what to do. Now, I got fancy with this and set it all as a giant hyperdoc Google presentation. But what I did in my presentation, my setup was I gave them the notes features here and the examples features here, and then gave them a self-check. And what I told them when they did this was I structured this so that this homework assignment here required the videos from these two quizzes, 1 and quiz 2. So if they watched these two quizzes and then they completed these two pieces and then they completed the self-check and they felt like they could do it, boom, they could jump straight to the homework and never actually do the little quiz, quiz 1, quiz 2. So the self-check is important for the kids because it gives them a place to measure their own understanding before they go and get graded. Does it take a little bit more effort to make this happen? Yes. Did I end up getting higher grades because of it? Absolutely. Every single one of my students who followed the videos, tried an example, and did a self-check scored on average 10 to 15% higher than students who did not. I had students who just watched the two videos, came up to me and said, Mr. Siegel, I'd like the homework. I said, no problem. Are you sure? They said yes. They did their homework and routinely they scored lower. Were there exceptions? Absolutely. But they routinely scored lower. I also linked right into this the lab activities that they were to do because I wanted them to see it in advance. I didn't want it to be like, okay, folks, and today we're doing a lab. No, I wanted them to see how the learning they were doing connected back to the activity that I wanted them to do as well. So keep in mind that this is all coming around. It's all that spiraled, scaffolded system of instruction. I have it set up in such a way that my students knew what my expectations were from the onset, and 2, that they knew what they needed to do all the way through and can plan a path, a personalized path through it. Did I design the path? Yes, but there are multiple routes that get through it. The biggest thing is this needs to be a struggle. Students need to learn how to struggle through their learning. This can no longer be, excuse me, Mr. Siegel, what do I do next? Excuse me, Mr. Siegel, how do I find? Excuse me, Mr. Siegel, it can't, because I've got kids who are in front of me, I've got kids who are at home, and in a couple of days they may switch, or I may never see a kid. So I cannot have 24 different faces from 24 different environments coming and asking me to do stuff. We need to create students who are self-reliant as much as possible. Okay, let's talk about assessment. Now, this is from Grant Wiggins. Grant Wiggins is the backward design, the universal design guy. He says learners need endless feedback more than they need endless teaching. That is so the heart of flipped classroom. So we need to talk about traditional assessments versus non-traditional assessments. We are now in non-traditional classrooms. The traditional test has to go. I'm sorry. How will you give tests in a virtual environment? The copy room is going to be the quietest room in the entire school because there's no reason anymore to give traditional tests. We must think of non-traditional methods for assessing student learning. So make puppets with them. This English teacher, Cheryl Morris, is a former California teacher. She decided to make puppets with her students and use the puppets for them to answer questions and demonstrate their understanding. Oh, and by the way, those are high school students. We're not talking about third graders here. We're talking about high school English students who are doing this, and they loved it. Use things like Poll Everywhere, Google Forms, Socrative, Mentimeter, Kahoot, anything to measure their understanding. Kahoot has taken things to another level during quarantine. There's a Kahoot Academy. You can jump in there. There are learning resources in Kahoot. Students can create their own Kahoot. You can become a verified educator from Kahoot. There's a ton of things that Kahoot has done so well during this whole process to help you as educators and your students better understand, learn, and assess the material. You also have Adobe Spark. Again, have students create the material. Have them present it back to class. Flipgrid with the whiteboard, no longer do you have to just have them measure their own understanding. Have them create materials to teach another level. This is Pictochart. Create infographics regarding whatever topic you're like. And even Prezzies. We love Prezzies. Even though they fly around and make us dizzy, Prezi is a great way for for the creative art students to put the materials outside of that rectangle of Google Slides. It's outside the box. It has multiple layers. It really allows you to think and be creative with how you organize your material. Okay, so now I told you I would get to homework, but I'm not an anti-homework person. However, I do not see how most homeworks fit into this world that we are now teaching in. And I ask you these questions. Where do traditional skills fit in a 21st century classroom? Because there are some, but what skills from the 20th century classroom are essential to creating well-rounded students? John Bergman, who's one of the people credited for founding the flipped classroom model, has a whole blog post on here. He goes into it in depth. This is Stacy Rochon's video. It's a little interview. And she talks about how her reducing homework helped reduce anxiety in her classroom. So there's a great video for you to watch here. She teaches down in Maryland, and she's on all over the internet with Buddy XO. She's fantastic, Stacy is. But we need to think about how does our homework fit? And we can't just say homework is now watching videos, because like I said, students are going to get fatigued. We have to create different ways to measure and have them demonstrate their understanding, and watching videos for homework can't be it. Remember what I said, we need to maximize our time with those students. What is the most effective use of your face-to-face time with your students? Every day at 7:25, you're going to have a group of kids show up virtually and in person to your classroom. What are you going to do with them for the next 57 minutes to make that time meaningful? We don't want students to come here and say, I don't know why I'm even coming to school. I can just watch everything at home. There has to be something meaningful done in school. So make the homework stuff structured so that the students find it meaningful. Because the other thing they're going to do is they're going to cheat. Because when students don't find something meaningful, they cheat. Okay? Because they're doing it for the grade, not for the learning. That's what we have to come back to. So please keep that in mind as you're doing this. It may mean that sometimes you give a video, sometimes they do research, sometimes it's a Flipgrid, sometimes it's a self-evaluation, sometimes it's watching a TED Talk, sometimes it's watching a YouTube video about a person demonstrating something on the internet, sometimes it's a piece from the Ellen DeGeneres show. Whatever it happens to be, we have to change it up so it's not always watch the video, watch the video, watch the video. And the other side of it too is, as I get into my final thoughts, is keep in mind that if your students don't do their homework, what will you do with them in class? You need to structure your daytime lessons, your face-to-face time, so that the students who watch the videos get more support from you, and the students who didn't watch the videos, but still get some support from you to complete the activities on hand. And it might mean that activities have to change, because you would never base your traditional lessons entirely around all of your students doing your homework. If you did that before this whole virus and pandemic thing happened, if you gave your students a homework assignment and then based your entire lesson on 25 kids doing their homework, you know that it ain't going to work, that something's going to fail. So how would you structure your lessons so that what would you do with the students who didn't watch that 10-minute video? Give them time to watch it and then have them jump in activities. So there's a lot more things that you can do now. Okay, so final thoughts. Number one, you have to collaborate. We cannot live in silos. You have to make sure you're reaching out to teachers. So please reach out to me. You can find me on all the social medias at Dare to Awesome. You can email me. Obviously, I'm at High School South, so if you're not at High School South, but please reach out to me there. The presentation is at Flipped Learning MTPS, but the other side of this too is this is overwhelming. We're all stressed. Those of you who are flipping need to get together and decide What videos am I going to make? What videos are you going to make? And how can I share? I work with chemistry teachers all the time. I say, here's my YouTube channel. You can find me. I just search for Mark Siegel on YouTube, and you'll see I have a whole YouTube channel that includes tech tips, science videos, chemistry videos, all sorts of things. Find things that work. Make your own when you can. Borrow other teachers when you can, but share resources amongst teachers so that you're not reinventing the wheel. If you teach the same subject as someone else, work together to make those videos. Science teachers, get together and film each other doing lab experiments. You know, there's no reason for every single person to make every single video. No one is judging you if you borrow someone else's work, okay? As my friend Brad says, Brad Campbell always said, is steal like a teacher. That's what we need to do. You know, teachers are the best people out there for finding materials and borrowing them and reusing them or reinventing them for our classrooms, not reinventing the wheel every time. So get out there. Like I said, TikTok, amazing resource. You can jump on Twitter and look for hashtag FlipClass. There's a ton of materials out there as well. And like I said, all the people that I linked on here, John Bergman, Kate Baker, all of them have Twitters as well, and they are always sharing resources. That is all I have for you. Thank you, beautiful people, for sticking through. Please make sure you click on this link and check out all the links and different resources that I have shared to you. If you have any questions at any time, please reach out to me. Have a great day.